Hi, I'm Mike, owner of the In-Groove in Phoenix, Arizona. Today I'm going to do a video reviewing a couple of recent new releases, and I'm also going to show you guys some stuff that I've added to my collection recently, stuff, that I brought in from the shop or went out and saw it, purchased for myself. I've done these videos in the past, but this is going to be similar to those, but I'm also going to discuss this next title at a little bit more length, and that is the new-ish, about a month and a half, 2 months old, the new-ish Whitney Houston from Mobile Fidelity. This is actually one of those titles that I was the most excited for when they announced. You know, I know a lot of people with Mobile Fidelity, they were waiting for the Eagles, they were waiting for the Van Halen. I was actually waiting for this Whitney. This is an amazing record. It was recorded exceptionally well, and the original actually sounds really good. So I was really curious of what they could do with this record. I gotta say, as a whole, I haven't really heard many people talk about this record. I don't know why. I don't know if there's a Whitney Houston stigma, or maybe guys who buy vinyl don't buy Whitney Houston. I don't know what the deal is. It sold for me pretty well in the store, but I don't hear anybody talking about it. I will say, and I've compared this Mobile Fidelity version. I've got both originals. I've got, this is, what do we got here? This is the original, and this is the Columbia Record Club. I've kind of compared the three of these, and I'll say as a whole, man, this is an amazing record. It just absolutely cooks. Right from the very beginning, the very first track, I Want to Dance with Somebody, there's that, is it kind of like a bass synthesizer? It has such a remarkable, detailed, lush sound, that very specific instrument on this record. It's so good. Love Will Save the Day. I think it's, what, the third or fourth track on side one? Side two. Yeah, Love Will Save the Day. Side three. Just, there's, so there's some percussion work with some bells. It's so detailed. It's so rich. The original is a little bit more compressed, so you don't have to turn it up as loud. But when you hit the volume knob on this new Mobile Fidelity record, man, this is a cooker. This is one of my favorite records that have come out in the last couple of months. I highly recommend this. If you're a casual Whitney fan, you'll really enjoy this. This is recorded well above average, and it sounds fantastic. So against the three copies I have, I don't foresee myself ever listening to the other two, although I'll keep them. Yeah. The other one is a record I was looking forward to a bunch as well. That is the new Ray Barretto Acid on Fania. This is Violently Please. I actually just got this today. This is a very difficult Fania record to find an original of. Maybe if you're living in, the New York area, you'll find this a little easier, although I doubt it. Let me pull this out of the plastic, because they did a killer job with this. They do a killer job with their jackets in general. This is AAA. Lacquers were cut from the original mono master tapes by Ryan Smith. They do a lot. Got this double sleeve. They do a lot of all analog cuts. But they do a lot of stuff from Safety Masters, but they do stuff from master tapes. But look how awesome this cover is. Did a fantastic job on this. I was looking forward to this because this is an extremely difficult record to find clean. I've had copies of this record in the past, but they're always noisy. The copies I have, I think it was just the nature of the Fania releases at that point in time, or they were just probably partied with and played to death. But I've never found, a really clean original. So, and this is one of those albums that, I think it's been reissued before, but I think it's been just mediocre reissues, maybe like a Scorpio reissue or that type of reissue in general. Sounds really, really good. Don't have much to compare it with because every copy that I've ever gotten of this has been relatively trash. Like I said, I've gotten rid of it. But this sounds really good. The Fania releases aren't Blue Note. Don't get me wrong. They don't have the Rudy Van Gelder secret magic sauce to them. But they are really doing a really good job in general with the Fania reissue campaign. Most of them are being done by Kevin Gray, cut from the original master tape as just standard craft releases. It's kind of a bummer that the most iconic title, I think, on the label is... Finally Please, done by Ryan Smith, but it's still really good nonetheless. I really enjoy this. This is kind of a good solid ad. So those are, I think, the two newest vinyl records. Although I did get this, I went and saw Metallica here. They did a 2-day show in Phoenix. First day they had COVID, they cut it short. We got no mask puppets, they cut another song. Worst concert I've ever been to. The sound is absolutely atrocious. You know, in the stands, all I could hear, I think I was like 10th row off the floor, but it was like, didn't know what song they were playing. It was just horrible. But at the concert, if you got there early enough, they actually had a Phoenix-specific color variant. This is the Phoenix Red Splatter Metallica color variant. I got this while I was there. Pretty pricey. They're like a couple, $200-300. I got it more as, you know, in the old days, you'd buy stuff like programs and posters or shirts. This is for me like the ultimate like concert souvenir, because it's something, although I don't really care for this album, it's something that I actually would like to hang on to as, you know, it's a good souvenir for me as opposed to, you know, a concert program or something like that. But I gotta say, so I sat in the stands night one, wasn't even gonna go to the second night, but so many people were coming in the shop and they're like, oh, I sat in the stands, it was awful. Then I talked to somebody else, oh, I was on the floor, the sound was really good. So I actually made the decision just night two, which turned out to be the following week. Let me buy floor tickets. I bought floor tickets, sound was dramatically improved, it was really good. It wasn't any, you know, amazing audiophile type experience, but it was like passable on night two. But I really enjoyed myself, and this is kind of what I picked up from it. So, some new vinyl. This was in a box in my back room for like 2 years, 3 years. I bought a big box set collection a couple years back, and I'm still not even through it all. I've lost half the boxes. They're piled amongst 30 other collections that I bought in the past. But this was actually the last White Zombie record that I needed for my collection. Super Sexy Swingin' Sounds. Very difficult record to get. You don't see this very often. I actually came to White Zombie like, it's funny, when I was real young, my mother was dating this guy that was just nuts about White Zombie, and he was just such a tool. I despised him, so anything he liked musically just like super turned me off. But a few years later, I got into Rob Zombie. You know, it was kind of big when I was in high school, and kind of worked my way back and ended up getting over my old hang-ups and digging White Zombie. But that was cool to get that. Okay, so this is a really cool record. Here's like a $4 Horwitz record. Vladimir Horwitz, the New York Philharmonic Rachmaninoff Concerto No. 3. This is just a mediocre-ish, you know, red seal pressing from the 70s. They're not very desirable, but I'll show you something. So I know exactly where I bought this collection. I had a friend of mine contact me. He knew a guy that like liquidated estates. He was dealing, and he had a lot of like great collections, and he would liquidate estates for audio gear, and then the records he would sell off. I went to this guy's house, beautiful equipment, but the collection was like a lot of like 70s and 80s classical records. It was just awful. There was a few Mobile Fidelity Beatles, a few things like that in there. They wanted a specific price. There was like no way I could do it, but I thought about it as time went on. I'm like, you know what? I'm not going to make a nickel on this particular deal, but let me pull the trigger on this. It might lead to something really good. I mean, I knew the guy through another guy, and I felt like good things were going to come. So I bought the collection. I got to the guy's house. I knew I was losing money right away. I got to the guy's house, and he's like, hey, man, I want you to cover me on the boxes. You know, no, it's like 40 boxes. I'm like, oh, yeah, no problem. Like, you know, 40 boxes at U-Haul, what is that, 80 cents a box, 30 bucks. Hey, yeah, no problem. He hands me this bill. He spent like $800 on these boxes. I'm like, dude, there's just no way I'm giving you $800 for 40 boxes. I'm not doing it. I'm like, I'm losing money on this. And it was just like out of principle, I just wasn't going to do it. Long story short, he ended up never contacting me again, and he sold great collections to other people after this. Like, and he was probably thinking, oh, these other guys are so much better to work with. I should have never went to that Mike guy. But he was selling me like the 70s and early 80s classical records that most of them I've just thrown away because they're just almost impossible to sell. You know, they're just, you put them in the dollar box for 4 years, maybe one out of every 100 will sell. You know, it's that type of stuff. And of course, I saw some of the collections at other shops that he brought, and it was like big audiophile collections and the mobile fidelity stuff. But I got saddled with the classical. But anyways, I was digging through one of his boxes, and most of, like I said, everything I got from this guy went right into the trash can. It was just junk. But I found 2 of these together, back to back, and I'm like, wonder why he had 2 of them. I looked on the back, and Vladimir Horwitz signed this copy. So he had 2 because he had one that he actually wanted to listen to, and then he had this one, which he wanted to keep in pristine shape. Looking online, it's a pretty sought-after signature. And, I mean, absolutely legendary musician. His stuff, most of his stuff isn't worth a ton. But, yeah, it was, seeing that on there, kind of like, almost missed it. It's sad because who knows what was in some of these other boxes, because the guy that I purchased them from, of course, wasn't the owner. He really didn't know what was in there except for the titles, you know, but people hide things in records, and people have random autographs on records, and I think back, who knows what I threw in the dumpster, you know, that he had stuffed inside of a musical heritage society record, or, you know, written on the back. But I caught this, and this was a super cool catch. I brought that home. I recently been buying some, I shouldn't say I've recently been buying some more jazz. I'm always buying jazz, and I've just been buying stuff to try to upgrade my collection. And sometimes I get things that are upgrades, and then a lot of times people are full of it and they just grade everything near mint or VG plus, and it's not. That ends up with a relatively clean copy for the store. But these actually were some nice upgrades. I'll kind of run you through those. Let's see here. This is a really nice copy, first pressing of the Miles Davis Quartet. This is a nice 50th Street, New York address. Got a little bit of seam damage. You know, these mid-50s Blue Notes just didn't, or excuse me, mid-50s Prestige stuff. I'm having a difficult time some of these earlier Miles. This and the Miles with the green cover. Finding really like truly minty copies, but this is a pretty above average copy. It actually had the wax inner sleeve, but this wouldn't necessarily, this is like a real strong VG plus. I wouldn't say as a whole this was an upgrade to my collection, but maybe the disc was. I don't think the cover was, but I'll suss one of those out here in the next couple of days, and the other one will make its way into the shop. This is another copy that is actually an upgrade for me, just because I had a little later pressing of this. This is Miles Davis's Blue Haze. It's actually a really solid copy. It's just unfortunate it has this like bend here in the cover, which you don't see clean covers that are bent. But the vinyl on this is pretty nice. You know, it's got that paper scuffing, which actually happened. A lot of that happened. It looks like paper scuffing, but you'll find that from the wax inners as well. I've gotten a lot of these old Prestige titles that have been sitting in those wax inners for 40 years, and they develop that kind of like splotchy look to them as well. But that's a pretty solid copy. That'll be something I add to my collection. Here's another record that I actually just finally bit the bullet and paid like super top dollar, but it was one that I've wanted. Duke Pearson's Sweet Honeybee. This is like a key record to pick up for a key reason, and that is the master tape of this doesn't exist. It will not be a Blue Note Classic series. It'll not be a Tone Poet. If you want this record, you got to buy an original. And I found the absolute cleanest original you will ever find. The guy was selling it on eBay. I think he said he opened it from new. I mean, it is, and it looks like it. Let me just kind of show you. It's not a, it was a couple $100. It's not a super, super high dollar record. But I think there's 2 known. You know, there's the Liberty insert, which this was first pressing. This was a Liberty record. But this is one of, I think, 2 master tapes that are kind of publicly well known to either be damaged or missing, non-existent, which is pretty rare for the Blue Note archive because it's been so meticulously kept up. You know, and Joe Harley, other people have mentioned how great that archive is. What kind of, you know, fantastic shape, whether it's master tapes, images, you know, these things exist for that archive, but this is a record that doesn't. So it was kind of cool to be able to finally get that. You know, it was one that I always thought, it'll come in one day, and I never sought it out. But then just, you know, 10 years and it's just never popped up. I just said, let me get it. I'm tired of waiting. This is a record that I had a lot of high hopes for. And I have the Indie Blue exclusive of this open that I've listened to, but this is the Newberry Comics version. They did 500 of these on red vinyl. This is Roger Waters' new The Dark Side of the Moon reimagined version. When I heard snippets of this at first, I was really stoked. I like his voice the way it is now. It's kind of like, for me, it's like Johnny Cash at the end. He had that very worn down and tattered sounding voice, similar to what he sounded like on the Lockdown sessions. And I wanted to hear an album kind of redone in the more somber, melancholy way that those Lockdown sessions went. And some of that is on this album. But there's too much spoken word. It just distracts for me from the album. And I love, a lot of people looked at this as, oh, he's replacing Dark Side. You can never replace Dark Side of the Moon. You can make tribute type albums. And even if you're Roger Waters and you wrote Dark Side of the Moon, you don't replace Dark Side of the Moon. You make like tribute albums. You make cover albums. And a lot of them are great. The Flaming Lips is a great, I listen to that all the time. Their Dark Side of the Moon. The Dub Side of the Moon. The reggae Dark Side of the Moon. It's fantastic. There's some great covers / inspired by Dark Side of the Moon, you know, records. So I was really looking forward to this, but I think the amount of distraction on this record kind of ruins it for me. There's a couple of good tracks. To be honest, I thought to myself, you know, I need to rip this record into like, it's not my thing, but like do like a computer rip of this, and if I could just like trim out a lot of that spoken word and poetry stuff, I thought to myself, you know, I might come up with a pretty good cut of this. Side 4 is just, it's just like an avant-garde presentation, you know. Trains are going by, he's talking to himself, he's getting spooked, he's scared, it's just really bizarre. Yeah, but I've got the red Newberry Comics version of it. I'll keep it, and I'll keep it along with my blue indie exclusive, and who knows, maybe I'll listen to it in the future and come to different terms on it. I got a really nice, found somebody online, had a really nice clean run of Chet Baker. Here is Chet Baker Sings on Pacific Jazz. I find these Pacific Jazz titles to be next to impossible to find clean. Very, very difficult. But I found a run of them here. I don't know if you can see that on camera, but look at the shape of that record. Unbelievably clean. I've got one in my collection that's going to make its way into the store. That's nowhere near this condition. But really excited to get that. I actually got the Chet Baker Sings in this as well, and I don't know why I didn't show it. I kind of put it away, and I forgot to grab it for this video. But I got a copy of Chet Baker Sings. Slightly less condition than this. Not perfect, but that was in really good shape. So were Chet Baker in Europe. Really, really clean. Pacific Jazz. Chet Baker, really nice, clean copy. Another Pacific Jazz. And Jazz in Ann Arbor. Pacific Jazz, this is a red wax pressing. So they were nice to get to the collections. Again, every one of those records I have, so there'll be some great jazz dupes coming into the store. Here is a couple of titles. I bought a collection from a divorcee maybe about 6 months ago, and maybe it was about a year ago. She had a lot of Disney stuff as well, and like a lot of new wave stuff. The Disney stuff she wanted like huge money for, because she was like a Disney collector or like a dealer. So she got like premium, like she got a pretty big premium for these records as opposed to what like a record dealer would get, because I guess she was marketing stuff to a Disney collector. But she had 2 records from my childhood I absolutely had to get, although I listened to them and they absolutely sound like crap. This is an original South Korean pressing of Aladdin. Check it out. In the shrink. Look how it looks like a bootleg, but it's not. It's an official pressing with hype sticker. Look how crappy that cover looks. It is horrible. So pixelated. So horrible, but my favorite Disney movie of all time. Again, when I was saw it in the movie theater, actually, when it was new. What was I, maybe 10, 11, 12, in that range? No, it was 10. I think it was 10 when it came out. Saw it in the theater. Something I just had to have on vinyl. So I got this, and then here's another Disney movie that I'm fond of from my childhood. And that is an original South Korean pressing of The Lion King. I paid up for these just because I wanted them. Like, tell me in the comments below if you own one of these records, or if you've ever even seen one of these. They have to be just next level rare. I mean, maybe you can go online and find them pretty easily, but to find like original pressings in the States, in the shrink with the hype sticker, can't be easy, so I just bought them. And the last is just a collection filler. You guys probably know that I'm a pretty degenerate Lana Del Rey collector at this point. I have every single one minus, I think I probably have close but 1 or 2, every single piece of vinyl Lana Del Rey has ever released. And I don't just mean like every album, I mean like every variation of every album. If there was 14 different pressings of a record, I have them all. This is a reissue of the Urban Outfitters exclusive of Ultraviolence that was sold on her website. And it's like, at this point, I got to keep the collection going. So every time there's some new variant, new repressing, I find myself having to buy it, and my Lana Del Rey shelf is getting ever so big. But yeah, that's it for this video, guys. Check us out online at theingroove.com. Until next time.